Hello, everyone, and welcome into Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm Jack Smith here with Ryan Abraham and RJ Abeytia. We're going to be talking the Stanford game, the 101st game between the Stanford Cardinal and the USC Trojans. Going to talk a little bit of David Shaw, some Tanner McKee, and give some final predictions for the game. But Ryan, RJ, pleasure to be joined with you guys on this Thursday night. We got Thursday night football on up there. USC Stanford this weekend should be a good one.
Yeah, Jack, thanks for hosting again. I'm back. You guys took over the Sunday night duties with Shotgun and Chris. We got a whole new lineup now. Jack's still here, but then we got RJ Abeytia, who knows Stanford better than anybody. We want to welcome him in. He's doing a great job on the site. RJ, what's going on, man?
I mean, this is an organizational depth flex for us here on the Tunnel Vision, I feel like. This is this is a deep squad.
We have a pretty deep roster. This is not like USC's offensive line. We're pretty deep here.
Yeah.
Right
Absolutely.
now, or the Stanford front seven or anything. We're pretty deep, so it's good. Yeah, we can roll large, and it's great to get RJ in. He's good. So Shotgun will be in town sometimes for these games. He will be up in the Bay Area for this one, but he's not. He's flying directly to San Francisco. So RJ and Shotgun will probably split off our Thursday preview shows. Then we'll kind of see what happens on the Sunday shows. Kind of play that around. But Jack should be here unless he's got some student duties or whatever, but we appreciate you doing. Everyone's praising you, Jack. We don't usually get interns come in, and we get a lot of praise for you. So that's very, we're very happy with the work you've been doing. So thanks for doing all that.
Yeah, of course. I think the favorite thing I saw early on was everyone was like, "Wait, he's not a girl." I feel like I'm the first guy to ever hold down this role, and I'm glad that SC fans are happy to have me. But I think I'm just an exciting show that we've got planned today. Won't be able to be here on Sunday because I'm not flying in till after you guys record, but I'm really excited to talk USC and Stanford, and we got no one better than RJ. He knows more about the Cardinal than pretty much any of us here.
Yeah, so that's good, and I'm very excited for the show. So what we'll do is preview what's going on. Not really that many news and notes from around practice this week because we kind of the injury things got shut down a little bit, but we'll kind of share any sort of insights what's going on with the program and what we think going into the game against Stanford. RJ will be there. I'll be there. Shotgun, Chris Trevino. So we'll have a whole crew up there on the farm to cover this one. We want to preview that. We're going to take comments in YouTube and Facebook. Those should be up. So if you have any comments in either of those, Jack will be monitoring that and put those up on the screen, answer some questions at the end for sure. Also, if you're watching live and you want to call in, you can do that by going 512-4-TUNNEL is the number. So live calls, we'll take some live calls and probably a little bit later on in the show. But RJ, so here's the thing. You know Stanford well. I famously said Stanford's going to be butt last year. They beat USC, they beat Oregon, and everyone's like, "You're an idiot. They're not. They're pretty good." And I'm like, I stuck with my conviction. They're butt. They end up losing like the last 7 games or whatever and go 3-9. No changes to the coaching staff from David Shaw. He's just going to stick with his guns. He did change some philosophy stuff.
Yeah.
Right, so they're trying to simplify things. Same coaches, we're just going to change our defensive front. We're going to change how we do things. So, I guess you could say there's changes, and but there's guys are coming back that are healthy, which helps. You bring in a safety from Oklahoma, I think, who's going to be the only transfer portal guy. So I'm sort of buying in that Stanford's not going to be as bad as I thought they were going to be. Tell me about what you think about the Stanford team compared to kind of last year.
I think that's about as far out on the limb of optimism that you can go at this point until we see. I mean, look, I think it's just kind of a lesser extreme version of USC. I think Stanford's best side of the ball is offense. Okay. I think everyone kind of agrees there's good potential there. I don't know that it's USC level potential with what they've got and what they can do. And then the huge question is defense, which I think you would also say pretty much the exact same thing about USC. I just think the extremes are not the same. I think there are more, as of now, there are more questions about the Stanford defense than the USC defense. Although I don't know if Saturday is going to manifest any real reckonings or conclusions. People always, for however many years it's been, I think 6, 7, 8, 9 years that this has become this week 2 game for Stanford and USC. It's always been mentally kind of this litmus test, I think, on both ends, where it's like, okay, we're getting a pretty decent team early in the year. This should kind of tell us something. It doesn't always work out that way. As we learned last year, sometimes it tells us nothing.
Yeah.
I mean,
it seems like a lot of times it tells us nothing. I mean, if you remember last year, it got Clay Helton fired, so they were like put it on this trajectory that we're on
Clay
right
Helton
now.
Something.
Yeah, and we thought, oh, wow, Stanford's pretty good. And the thing, too, like we thought, hey, Oregon State came into the Coliseum and put up a bunch of points. We thought they're going to be pretty good. Well, it turned out USC was butt. Like, they were terrible.
Yeah.
Oregon State was pretty much terrible on the road, except in the Coliseum, Stanford, same thing. But in the Coliseum, they were great.
No, I mean, I think that's the thing is we build up a lot of it because this is a game that I think both fan bases circle. And it is early in the year, and I think a lot of people would prefer that it wasn't. But that aside, I think when you're talking
Don't
about
have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, no, will not be a problem. Although I will say,
actually, it could because
for the second time that I've heard him do it, going back to Pac-12 Media Day, David Shaw very explicitly said that he very much hopes to remain on USC's schedule beyond what's going to happen in 2 years. Now, who knows?
And if that's the case, it could be a week 2 game again.
Absolutely.
Because it'll be out of conference game, unless Stanford joins or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, the point is, I think both of these teams are looking at this game as one in which they have a real chance to kind of prove things and to remove some of the question marks that there are after 1 week. And so I think that's kind of the big appeal of it, objectively speaking.
Yeah. We can start probably on the offensive side of the ball for Stanford. And Jack, if you want to jump in for anything or have questions, but you saw guys like John Humphreys last year, obviously Tanner McKee, a lot of people, their NFL scouts are drooling over the guy. You remember like when Justin Herbert was at Oregon, before he did much, you're like, that guy's going to be amazing. Like you were kind of getting this. It's year 3 for Tanner McKee. He's older because he did a 2-year mission. Getting some guys healthy. The tight end was really good. He's the only offensive player for Stanford that's on the preseason All Pac-12 team is the tight end. What's it? I'm blanking on his name.
Urosic. Ben Urosic.
Yeah, but you feel like this is going to be a good wide receiver group. R.J. Smith, Emmett Smith's son, broke off an 87-yard run, but didn't really do much the rest of the game against Colgate. So he had 110 yards, but 87 was on that first run. But you feel like that he can be pretty good. This is not your dad's Stanford team, right? They're not going to be this pounded up the middle kind of thing. But the thing I'm curious about, RJ, I want to get your assessment of the offense. To be USC, it's a really, you look at the offense, you're like, wow, they're not going to punt a lot. We got to keep them off the field. Is David Shaw in his mind going to be like, we have to keep them off the field? I know we got these great receivers, but let's run the ball and see what we can do to limit possessions and stuff.
Well, I think that's what he hopes he can pivot to.
Yeah.
I think the bottom line is they got to get points early to keep it a competitive game. You can't, if you stumble on the first 2 possessions, if you're Stanford, right, and suddenly you're down 17 or 21-0, your model that you just said, the blueprint is kind of gone up in smoke, right?
Yeah.
But if they get to a place, because what it does, it's the possession count, right? Like a fast tempo team like USC is going to play 13 to 14 offensive possessions. That's kind of what they're banking on, right? When Stanford's able to run and limit and do that, it becomes
8 or 9, right?
It becomes an 8 or 9 possession game. And you can see, the last time Stanford was really good enough to kind of do this to a couple teams was in the 2020 season.
Yeah.
But you can see it, and what happens is you see these up-tempo teams get to the fourth quarter, and they're like, wait a minute, it's the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
This is the last time we're going to touch the ball. We kind of have to score right now. I don't know if it's going to get all the way down the line to that situation, but that's the effect. That's what you're kind of trying to do when you talk about reducing the possession count.
And I would love to look back at the games because there's just teams like that. They're like the boa constrictor. They just kind of wrap you up. But if you score or if you sprint out ahead, it's really hard to kind of execute that. But if USC muffs the opening kickoff and Stanford punches it in from the 5, you're like, okay, this is now with a lead. I feel like it's a whole different game, And
sure.
if Stanford gets ahead, you can do those kind of things. But is this going to be a more explosive offense? I mean, if you look at the numbers last year, it was not, obviously not good. Tanner McKee took care of the ball pretty well. He threw picks in kind of bunches in certain games, but big wide receivers going to be a tough matchup for like the USC secondary. Good tight end. If you got, if Smith is going to be a good running back, the offensive line is kind of, it's all back, right? But it's sort of like wasn't very good last year. Gave up some sacks, things like that. But the offensive numbers weren't good. They were really bad. They were like in the hundreds for a lot of those categories. But do you feel like major steps, strides can be taken with the offense this year?
Well, it's interesting because if you look at what happened to Stanford last year, Bryson Tremaine, who kind of had his coming out party in that game against USC. He's actually a big receiver, went to, I think, both Venice and the Brentwood School, so kind of a local product.
Okay.
He was a walk-on, built himself up to a scholarship guy, and had a really great game against USC last year in the Coliseum and kind of had that upward trajectory. He got hurt and was lost for the year, and Tanner McKee's numbers pretty conspicuously dropped.
Okay.
Significantly.
There's like a correlation between them.
I think there may or may not have been. So, when you look at him back, when you look at Michael Wilson back, now fully healthy, choosing to come back as a senior player, that wide receiving core is good. I mean, I tweeted it out. They're good and they're big.
And they're big.
They're a problem. I mean, 6'5", 6'4", 6'3", and then 3 6'2" guys.
Short
right?
ones, yeah.
And USC has, I think, 1 6'2" guy in the entire secondary 2 deep.
Yeah.
And that's as tall as it gets, So the pieces are there. I think when you look at Stanford, and we can get over to some USC talk at some point, given the helmet and everything that's going on here.
But we're previewing Stanford game.
Yeah. But when you look at Stanford last year, I think the landmine that they stepped on, or kind of the thing that happened that was unexpected, was the offensive line was just not good.
Yeah.
And it was a group of players who were pretty highly recruited, decent recruits, decent talent. It was the first year under the new offensive line coach, and it just didn't work. I mean, they couldn't do the things that we've been talking about, and kind of fans, if you look at the message boards about like that reputation that they had, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, they just couldn't do those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And they've pivoted to Tanner McKee and the wide receivers because that's where your talent is. Now, if that line steps up and plays to its recruiting pedigree, to its talent, they should score points. They should be a good team. They should be a watchable team every week. And then it just comes down to what do they have, if anything, defensively.
Yeah, defensively, it's a good pivot. Kai Blue Kelly, one of the best corners, not only in the conference, but in the country. They get the other cornerback who was injured all last year, right? And then the safety transfer who's going to come in and play nickel, I believe.
Yep.
From Oklahoma. With Alex Grinch, what's his name? I'm blanking on. Alex Grinch was asked about
Patrick
him.
Fields.
Oh, Patrick Fields.
Patrick Fields, yeah. And like, it was like almost like he was going to cry. He was just like,
he said he was almost going to cry, and I mean that's the most we've not seen Alex Grinch like that since he's been here. Anyway,
I mean, you love to see that where that was his guy, right? That was one of his guys, and he's playing. You get to bring someone with you that go other places. It sounded like he really hoped he was going to come to USC, but he's going to be the starting nickel for. And obviously USC's wide receivers run deep, so you're going to need Kelly, you're going to need Fields, you're going to guys making plays because it's going to be tough to stop all the receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have a little piece about this coming out maybe tomorrow, but there's been a lot kind of interesting things said this week about Patrick Fields. And look, if you're a Stanford defense that is trying to get back to respectability and you have as many question marks as you have, you're taking any advantage, any help you can get, right? I don't think Patrick Fields is enough to, I don't think he's the Lincoln Riley offense Da Vinci Code, and he's suddenly gonna, I don't think it's gonna spiral that way. But certainly, anything that helps, right? That's what you're trying to do, and so we'll see. It should be interesting. I mean, Caillou Blue Kelly is a guy worth talking about. I feel like if you look at Drake London's game log from last year, that's kind of all the evidence you need to see the kind of player that Caillou Blue Kelly was and is. And I think not very surprising, but plausibly could have gone into the NFL draft this year.
He could have, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. So you've got some pieces out there. You've got some veteran experience out there. And we're just going to have to see. I mean, I just think that you look at Stanford in the middle between the tackles, which, again, traditionally you're saying to yourself, oh, well, that's where Stanford makes its reputation. But, they don't have a guy at 300 pounds on the interior.
Yeah.
They have Tobin Phillips, who's a junior, at 295. The guy below him, actually, Zach Bucky, brother of USC commit Grant Bucky.
Yeah.
But he's only at 265. And so it's weird because I kind of had this thought today. We're talking all about Lincoln Riley and what he does and how Stanford going to stop those receivers. But part of me is a little suspicious or a little curious to see if Lincoln Riley doesn't see if they just can't run the ball.
Yeah.
And if they can, Caleb Williams might not throw the ball 30 times.
Yeah.
Because I think with no matter what football coach at any level ever, one thing that I feel is certain, if they know that you can't stop the run, then that's the only thing you're going to see.
Right. And I think USC's offensive line played really well last week. That was against Rice, but we told you guys, look, the interior of that line, they got 8,000 starts between them or something, or minutes played. I mean, there's a lot of, minutes, and then they're rotating. They're not very deep, but if you have all 6 guys, and Lincoln Riley talked about this week that, they're going to keep this going, and if one guy separates, they'll play him. But you need more than 5 guys. You're going to play more. So I think the offensive line, they can lean on that. And to have 4 touchdowns scored by the running backs last week, Rice does give you sort of a Stanford look, I guess, because, Mike Blugren or whatever. But, I think you might be right. This might be a situation where, Blue Kelly might, be able to lock down Jordan Addison. And they're the pass rusher from Mater Dei, the freshman that was the first freshman to start, David Bailey. He's someone that USC recruited highly. So there's definitely some pieces. But the overall depth, I mean, it's, I don't know. We're going to see. But this might be something where USC just sort of leans on the offensive line, pound a little Travis Dye, a little Austin Jones. Of course. Got a couple touchdowns last week. He would love to score against his former team. I don't think there was animosity or anything like that. But it's just one of those things where, you want to, he said he was getting a lot of texts from teammates and stuff this week. And he seems like a great kid just talking to him. He's been fun to talk to. So, I talked to him last week, and I was asking him, did the defensive coaches pick your brain at all? He said no. And then he was talking about it again this week. It seemed like maybe a little bit more this week.
They did. Yeah. Come on. Look, and again, I think Lincoln Riley said it right. Ultimately, this is going to get settled on Saturday. This is going to get settled with USC's players and Stanford's players. But you're insane if you don't corner Austin Jones and ask him questions about Stanford's offense. And if you're Stanford, of course they're asking Patrick Fields everything he knows from spending, 4 seasons going up against Lincoln Riley's the offense in practice.
Exactly.
Of course you're going to ask those kind of questions. So it's a fun intrigue kind
of
But
both sides know that, too. You're Patrick Fields knows we do this, we're going to do that. Or Austin Jones, when we were doing this with him, we're not going to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's why Lincoln Riley said what he said, because, he also said at a certain point, you do what you do.
Yes.
You can't. You're not going to reinvent yourself just because Patrick Fields is out there running around somewhere at some position or because Austin Jones is in the backfield.
There was a funny Simpsons episode way, way back. This is in the 90s. And Mr. Burns is managing the Springfield Isotopes softball team. And they brought in all the ringers. And they had Wade Boggs and Darryl Strawberry and all this stuff. And Homer was playing. And Homer Simpson was getting all these home runs and stuff. But once they brought in the ringers, he's Darryl Strawberry was taking his position, so he couldn't play anymore. And at the end of the game, Burns switches him out. It's well, it's a righty versus lefty matchup, and Darryl Strawberry's I got 5 home runs today. So sometimes you can outthink yourself. We're not going to throw to Jordan Addison because
you should throw to Jordan Addison. That's what you have him here for.
Do what you do.
Yeah, do what you do, and maybe we'll just give Jack a pause to Google all those references that you made, because for sure he wasn't alive when any of that happened. So he has virtually no shot to catch that. But we'll try to do we'll try to reference something on this side of the millennium.
Jack, any thoughts on Stanford or questions you want to talk about?
Or the Simpsons?
Or the Simpsons, yeah.
So I know nothing about the Simpsons, but I think one interesting thing to this game is everyone's coming in and realizing like Lincoln Riley has to game plan completely from scratch against all these Pac-12 teams, but also David Shaw has never played against Lincoln Riley as a member of the USC Trojans either. So it's like both teams, it's pretty much a wash in game planning. You can't go off really anything that was used in the past, and that might even give USC a little bit of advantage because they've got more of a layover staff from people that have seen Stanford before. But I mean, Lincoln was saying that his bed is in his office. It seems like they have to pretty much game plan from scratch, and David Shaw, I think, mentioned he has to do the same thing. That USC's tape from last season doesn't matter as much to them. They got to go and watch tape from Oklahoma. So I just thought that was maybe an interesting wrinkle that we could get into.
Yeah, it's funny. Someone on the Peristyle. If you're not a member, go to the Peristyle. Go to uscfootball.com. You can sign up for $1. Just do it. You got to do it. If you didn't take advantage of our sale last week, you can still get $1. Sign up for $1 for a month. So just go check it out and get on the Peristyle. It's crazy busy. All kinds of USC fans talking all kinds of USC football. But one of the threads they were talking about, that was like sort of like David Shaw going like, yeah, they got a lot better from last year. Like, yeah, we can't really look at the tape from last year because they sucked and now they're good. Like, basically, that's what he was saying.
I think that's an accurate statement. I think to a certain extent, right? I mean, they weren't a good team last year, and just to quickly go back just to that Patrick Fields thing really quickly, because everyone cares about the results. We get it. Everyone wants to see USC winning Pac-12 championships, winning national championships. They love hearing all the paces that Lincoln Riley's putting them through. He's keeping them in the building, all day and all night. They're looking at film. They're doing this. They're doing that. And everything just feels more professionally run, and everything just feels like it's building towards that upper echelon. But I have to say, like, the sincerity that I think I detected from Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley today, talking about Patrick Fields, talking about a former player, kind of suggests that there is maybe a substantive connection going on within this program. And look, you have to perform if you want to play.
Yeah.
That's not going to drop, and that's not going to change. But I did think it was worth noting because we've heard so much about chemistry, and we've heard all the right things from the players in terms of how much the coaches have tried to reach out to them, how much they've tried to connect and encourage and build and kind of nurture in a certain way. So, I did think it was worth noting the way those guys talked about a former player that, yes, this is a bottom line business, but I also think that they're making room for those connections that you kind of appreciate.
Yeah. He's a grad transfer, right? Is he?
Yeah.
Kudos to, holy cow. Like, you go from Oklahoma to Stanford as a grad transfer. Like, Stanford loses, like, their own seniors because they can't get into grad school, and they're
Correct.
Stanford players. Like, so to come in, that's pretty impressive.
He's David Shaw's dream recruit because David Shaw literally did nothing to get him. Literally nothing.
He just I'm smart enough to go there.
He took care of it himself. He took it upon himself to get admitted to the program just as a guy, as an applicant. And only after being admitted did he essentially knock on the football office's door and say, hey, I'm a grad student, but by the way, I was Oklahoma's starting safety. Do you think there's like a place for me?
Insane.
And it's like, yeah, we probably, we're, as you saw, your recognized butt, I guess. But like, they're like, yeah, I think probably there is a place for you.
We could.
Yeah, I think we could squeeze you in under the 85 count. So he's an interesting guy. It'll be interesting to see what he does out there on the field. But from the USC lens, yeah, I did take note of just kind of the way Grinch and Riley talked about him.
Yeah. And I think that when we did talk a lot about the chemistry aspect of it and, what you could see in the spring game, we felt like the chemistry was good going into the spring game. Then they added a whole bunch of new players. So, like, even if the chemistry was good then, it might have been – you added Jordan Addison. And you added, like, what's it called? Eric
Gentry.
Gentry. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm blanking on names there. You added, like, these pieces that are guys that are going to start, and you already, like, kind of built this chemistry in the spring, and now you're going to, like, upset it again in the summer. But, what we heard sounded like – guys were getting along. And Caleb Williams, like, I felt like I've been throwing to Jordan Addison for more than a year, not a couple months. And then you see it on the field, and the guys getting along and cheering for, I watched like the 60-minute replay, and they were showing Caleb Williams in the fourth quarter chatting on the sideline with like two walk-on dudes. Like, it just seemed like this is a cohesive unit, and it didn't have to be the way the team was assembled. And I think what you're talking about too with Fields, it's sort of like, there's players, coaches, and there's coaches that sort of are like, oh, I'm in my office, you can't really talk to me, but we want to get everyone along. It seems like at least Riley and his staff, they're someone that they do embrace like the players, and there's a genuine care factor for them.
And I think it's kind of necessary when you talk about taking over the roster that they took over. It's not about saying any more bad things about Clay Helton or anything, but this is a group of kids who were highly recruited, were told how good they were told they were going to be good, and then weren't good.
Yeah.
And were left to just kind of reconcile that for themselves. You know what I mean? I think they took the right approach, and the Patrick Fields thing is kind of maybe the lesson is that's their long-term approach as well, is that they want to have these kind of meaningful connections because, talent is the one thing, but I think what a lot of USC has been missing are these intangible things over the years, and I think all the evidence we have so far is that it's going in the right direction. I think we haven't seen them lose a game and respond to a loss. We haven't yet seen them get punched in the face in the middle of a game and deal with it, but that's not their fault. They've only played a game. Those are the next tests, but every other test short of that, I think being around this team, I think we feel like that piece is being cemented.
Yeah, and if you for this one, you talk about testing the game. USC only faced 7 third downs against Rice. That's crazy. I think I was listening to the Rainer Troy guys, and I think Michael was saying that's the lowest in FCS or whatever. No one or FBS. No one faced. No one only had that. And they convert. I forget. They converted 6 of 7 or something. It was something really high. Only one punt in the game, and that was when the backups came in the fourth quarter. But those are tests, right? And they had some third and longs. They had some plays that Caleb Williams had to go and make plays. And if Stanford's going to win, it's going to be they forced a lot more third downs, and for some reason, they don't convert on a 3rd and 8 or a 3rd and 9 or whatever. Or Caleb Williams takes off and run, but the Stanford's able to stop him at 6 yards, and they don't get the first down. Those things, the kind of things are happening, and we just really haven't seen them face. We've seen them face some adversarial downs in the Rice game, but they only had Caleb Williams was in for 44 plays. There just wasn't that much to kind of test you.
I mean, they scored touchdowns on their first 4 possessions. Is that right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Well, 3 and then pick 6 and then a field goal at the end of the half. So
okay, so it was as downhill.
They would have scored if it wasn't the end of the half. They probably would have scored another touchdown.
It was as downhill gets. Yeah. Right. And the question is, you remember the Chip Kelly Oregon teams, and in 2012, Stanford went up there and pulled off a monstrous upset in Eugene. And one of the things that Derek Mason, the defensive coordinator, talked about was getting Oregon into deep water. Right, getting them into a place late in the game where they weren't up by 4 touchdowns.
Right,
and then what are you going to do?
That'll
be the next litmus test for USC. I mean, someone's going to get them into there. I don't know. The thing about this game is, if it was a 1, a 2, or a 3-quarter game, you'd have a lot more success talking me into a Stanford upset, or it's going to be close all the way through. But 4 quarters it's tough to hold up. 4 quarters against what USC is going to be bringing offensively. And I think that's kind of the difference for me, because I find it plausible that Stanford will score. I find it plausible. Maybe they'll make some plays. Maybe they'll get a stop on Caleb Williams, right? Or maybe they'll force a couple punts or whatever, get a turnover. But over 4 quarters, it's really tough to see them holding up. And if they do, credit to them. But I think that to me is why I think USC is the lean in this game.
Yeah, you got to be, you're Stanford, you're trying to get USC to have 2 possessions a quarter and don't score on one of them, and then you have a really good chance. But the problem is if they're going to get 3 or 4 possessions and score on 3,
2 or 3,
that's going to be a little bit of a problem. Jack, do you have anything else, or we can jump into questions right away? I don't know. I'm open, man. We're just having some fun.
Have you learned anything about The Simpsons yet?
No.
I love that you could recite the entire roster from that Simpsons thing.
It would be hard to do. Okay.
But Eric Gentry, you were just what? Who's this guy?
Thing.
Why do I need to know that guy? What's? And he's someone we should talk about, I think, at some point. I think he's very worth talking about. I talked about him on the Sirius XM radio hit that I did on the way in.
Nice. RJ's just media mogul today.
Yeah, all over the place. Dozens.
I mean,
dozens of people know what my voice sounds like now.
And it's funny because he's 6'6". If you look at him, you're like, yeah, it's probably going to take him a year to fill out. And that's why when I first saw him, I'm like, yeah. And then you start hearing he's getting first team reps. You start talking to players about him, like, oh yeah, he had an interception in the scrimmage we had. You see him in the game. He didn't get credited with a pass deflection, but he got some hurries. He did, tackle for loss, I believe. He's a stud. He was a freshman All-American at Arizona State for a reason. And when you're Stanford and you add one, transfer in, and he's a stud, it's okay. Like USC added 20. Like you're hoping you have a decent hit rate, just like a recruiting class.
Absolutely.
But a lot of them, you want it right now. And I don't think he was someone you were counting on as an immediate impact guy. And it's a position of need. Like they haven't had a lot of production at the linebacker spot. You love Shane Lee, what he was able to do, led the team in tackles, pick six, all that. Raylan Goforth coming back. They seemed to be doing a good job there. But I did not pencil Eric Gentry into being the starting middle linebacker. And the results, I think, have been good so far.
If you go back and read Gerard's future impact, where he talked to Chris Cartman, our Arizona State 247 guy.
Yeah.
There was a lot in there to like. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all going to show up on day one. But I think I think we all kind of had the same visceral reaction, is that even in pads, he looks like a basketball player.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to reconcile what we're hearing about him with looking at him. But I think the reality is, I think he's got good football instinct. That kind of stuff that you can't teach. I think one of the more intriguing things in Gerard's article that Chris Cartman touched on is the potential for him to be effective at multiple spots, which I think is a big deal for USC right now, because I don't think they know where the spots are that they're going to get solid production all the time. And it might be a situation where they move him around to where they need to do.
Especially if they're not getting a lot of pass rush and he can come off the edge or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, what have we been hearing about him? Oh, he's 6'6", but he sticks his nose in there. He's got no problems playing in the tackles. He's violent. He's angry. He's doing the things you want to see.
Super athletic.
Yeah,
really athletic.
Well, and I think in the Pac-12, a guy who can reduce passing windows or compromise passing windows up the field. I mean, Caleb Williams, that was one of the more interesting anecdotes we got in training camp. Caleb Williams kind of admitted, I didn't notice that he subbed in. I was looking down the field. I thought I had something, and the next thing you know, these giant arms are taking the ball away. And I think that matters in a league that spreads it out and passes as much. So, the thing, with Caleb Williams and Eric Gentry that I think it's important to note, these are young dudes. A lot of people are putting these huge, Heisman and this and expectations, but no matter what you see from USC in the first half of the season, health set aside, this is unquestionably going to be a better team in the back half than it is in the front half. I think, I think there are some legit danger games for USC starting this Saturday, but I also think, I think Josh Henson said it, we don't want guys who start week one and 4 weeks later they're the same guy.
Yeah.
And 4 weeks later, they're the same guy. There is an expectation that you improve, but I also think looking at this team, Caleb Williams doesn't even have 10 career starts in college. I'm pretty sure this was start 8.
It's
this
8
last
or
one.
9, yeah.
So, you have to factor that in, but Eric Gentry is another player. I mean, they're going to look a lot different in November.
Yeah.
Again, knock on wood that they're getting to play all these games and blah, 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 but I think that's another thing to consider when you look at this USC team and you're like, well, game by game, they should beat all these teams. Well, maybe, but they're more vulnerable now than I think they're going to be for 8 weeks from now.
They're like a young Luke Skywalker. The potential is there.
Exactly.
Another reference that Jack's not going to get. But they haven't learned the power of the Force yet.
I got that one.
Okay, good.
I didn't grow up under a rock. The Simpsons is a little different than Star Wars. But yeah, I mean, about Gentry, I think we all knew that when he came in, he was going to be good in pass defense. Obviously, 6'6" has that length. He was going to be in the passing lanes. I was really impressed with his ability to fit the run early. Him and Shane Lee were swarming around all the outside runs. Again, he needs to put on a little bit of weight, runs up the middle. He can't block jet quite as well as someone who might be a little bit bigger, but I think that was a very good game one to build off of for the future. And I mean, he said it when we were interviewing him after practice yesterday night, saying I didn't come here to beat Rice, I didn't come here to beat Stanford, I came here to win a national championship. Again, I'm not going to say that's going to happen, but they're saying that this is just a building block and they've got way higher aspirations. I think for Gentry himself, there's an ability for him to grow into a much better player. And I was thinking about this earlier this morning. SC has 4 players now that you could have considered freshman All-Americans last year based on where you looked, or just guys that were maybe the best at their position among freshmen, and Caleb Williams, Mario Williams, and then Gentry and Kalen Bullock. So I think there's a bright future for Gentry throughout this year, but then also, I mean, SC's got a lot of guys to build into next year as well. I know this is a Stanford preview show, but I think the future is definitely bright.
And the fact that Gentry, I mean, that was a great quote from him. And he doesn't, it's one of those things like he doesn't necessarily look the part. Like if you go down to your YMCA and there's this like short little chubby guy and you're like, oh, he's going to be down low, rebounded, and he's like jacking up threes and stroking them. You're like, oh, I didn't really expect that dude to do that. And it's like you look at Gentry, he's like, he's fitting the run pretty well. Like he looks pretty comfortable near the line of scrimmage with these big bodies that are like he's as thick as their leg, and seem to do it. So yeah, it's one of those things. There's potential for him to put on weight, and then he's like 225 or 230, and it's like he's 6'6", and like holy cow, like there's a lot of potential. The fact that he's this good now, I think there's just a lot of potential there.
I'm looking at the depth chart right now, and he's listed, and you always have to take it with a grain of salt, but they're going to give you on here, you're going to get every pound that you could possibly get. He's listed at 200. That's 15 pounds lighter than Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
And he's playing middle linebacker, and he's 6'6". He's 5 inches taller than Caleb Williams.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of really intriguing stuff with him. And again, I think one of the themes for this team is they're going to be a much different version 4 weeks, 8 weeks from now. I think unquestionably. Which on the backside, that's awesome. On the front side, these are not games to sleep on. The Stanford game. I think that Fresno State game, depending on how the Stanford game goes, if USC puts up a 42-0 win on Saturday, and the next game is 7:30 p.m. Fresno State, I don't care how good this staff is. Like, it's going to be tough to convince those dudes that there's some stuff that they need to work on, that they need to improve, right? Whereas if it's shaky this week at Stanford, it's kind of an attention-getting thing. Okay, maybe they're sharper, maybe they will take that game a little bit more seriously, but we'll see. And then again, Oregon State, I say it again and again and again, like they are the team that a lot of people still think Stanford is, just in terms of how they win and why they win and the way they're coached and the kind of what they do and the challenges they present in between the tackles. That I will be stunned if that's not a really tough game as well, for all the reasons we just talked about.
I want to get both of your thoughts on this. I'll do my own flex. I was on the Pac-12, Sirius side, Sirius Radio earlier with Evan Moore, who played for Stanford. And one of the questions he asked me was, would USC be ready to go in for? There can be a different kind of home field advantage for Stanford. You could go in there, and it's like not that big of a stadium. It's a really cool stadium, but the students aren't back until the end of the month.
Yep.
It can be pretty empty in there. And so how do you create your own juice? And some of it, I forget what we were talking about, where like it's sort of like the COVID year where they talked about that. You kind of have to create your own juice because you're in an empty stadium. And I didn't feel like – I felt like Lincoln Riley is a pretty good self-motivate. Like I think this is a team that can, exist on their own juice without having like a crowd being crazy. But I want to get both your thoughts on that. I didn't think that was going to be an issue, but
Jump in there, Jack.
Are you asking, like, do you think that Stanford will have enough juice, or
no, for like USC to go in and like, hey, you're all ready, and like you're waiting for the crowd to be yelling at you, and there's like nobody saying anything. There's some guy sipping wine.
It's a different test.
Yeah, there's guys like pass the Chardonnay and like what with.
And you can hear them.
Would you like a little brie? Like, this brie is bad. Like, look, what are we talking about here?
I think that there's two ways to look at it, where you could say like, oh, it's so quiet in here, like this isn't very hype, or you could say like, we just rolled into an opposing team stadium and they're not yelling at us. Like how many people complain that or come at SC for them not having fans at games sometimes last year when it was 4-7, 4-6, like when that was the record, but. Like if you can roll in there and say like we're coming into a game where they don't even have their own fans showing up here, and say that you can really dictate that the way the game goes, the way the stadium sounds too, and hopefully SC fans are traveling well for the game. So I think they'll do well enough to create their own juice. Everything we've heard from this squad, especially defensively from Alex Grinch, who every single time he talks is talking about energy and strain and physical and mental strain. Like I think they're going to do just fine creating their own hype.
It's a different challenge. And it is one that has gotten teams. I know Washington has
they have a problem.
A pretty good losing streak in Stanford Stadium, and the last game they played in there was exactly what you're describing. And they're used to 70,000 at Husky Stadium going crazy. It is a different challenge. It is. I think it's, I say it gritting through your teeth, of course, a little bit. It's not that nickname, the library, is Stanford player generated, and I'm talking from like generations. It gets handed.
I mean, the fact that Evan Moore brought it up to me,
100%, and so it's a different challenge. I think Jack's right, because I think the bottom line is, okay, maybe this team is susceptible to complacency, but not just because they beat Rice.
Yeah.
I didn't get the sense from anyone on that team this week that, like, well, we've solved every problem we've got. Not a coach, not a player. Like, that would be crazy if it's like, well, we were so high off the Rice game that we didn't want to get ready for our first Pac-12 road game.
Right.
That seems like a bit of a stretch. But I do think it is a different test and just another thing to kind of show us what's different with Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of transfers in, but there's still a good amount of players. There's a couple coaches lingering around that got whooped by Stanford last year.
Yes.
And you have Austin Jones coming over from Stanford. He said there's no animosity, anything like that. But, like, there's motivation to beat Stanford, and to not just beat Stanford by a point or two, but to really beat up on them, because that's what happened last year. Coaching change came right after the game. So I think there's definitely going to be enough motivation for this SC squad against the Cardinal because of last year, too.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good statement there. Why don't we jump into some... You want to do some questions? Do we have any calls?
We've got 2 live calls in the queue, so we can go calls, and we've got a good amount of questions to get to. So
yeah, okay, let's do that.
All right, we'll bring in the first live caller. Hi, you're on Tunnel Vision.
Hi, Ryan. It's Megan, the Aussie who flew in from Australia 3 days before the Rice game last weekend.
Hey, Megan. I hope you enjoyed your trip, and thanks for calling into Tunnel Vision.
I did till I got lost on the way home. But first things first, you talking Star Wars makes this Star Wars nerd-loving Trojan fan very, very happy. Just wanted to say that. I just wanted to say thank you to you, to Shoddy, to Chris, to everyone at the Coliseum. I was totally overwhelmed and probably looked so out of place as the tourist who flew in 3 days before and had no idea what I was doing or where I was going. It was a 20-year dream that came true. I've been a fan since the Pete Carroll days. Love Lincoln Riley. Just a couple of quick questions for you. The blowout that was the Rice game. Can we expect more of that from USC, given what we've had the past few years? Dare I mention Clay Helton's name? And secondly, Caleb Williams had what we call in Australia a blinder, meaning a brilliant game. 2 parts to the question, I guess. One, it was that expected of him? And 2, will it continue, if that makes sense?
All right. Well, thanks, Megan. I appreciate that, and I hope you had a wonderful time at the Coliseum. A 20-year dream, like if you got a bucket list thing like that, props to you.
Well,
that's awesome.
An early entrant for maybe fan of the year.
Of course.
I don't know that there's going to be another fan who makes that kind of mileage travel to see one game.
Yeah,
this year. So
there's like a USC fan in Yorba Linda. It's like, it's kind of far.
Yeah.
And then she comes all the way.
I didn't want to come in from Reseda.
Yeah.
Too much, but.
I think what she said was a blinder for Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I'm going to use that.
That's a good
100%.
one. I love that. That's good. Yeah, sure. I mean, it was expected that he was going to be really good. The fact that he missed 3 passes and one was a drop and one was a ball that was caught just out of bounds and one was a throwaway is pretty impressive. Like, even if you're doing routes on air, it's hard to complete every ball, and he pretty much was perfect. Pro Football Focus, I think he was the highest graded USC offensive player by far. As far as blowouts, I feel like this is a team that they're not going to blow out everybody, but there's enough firepower there that it's just sometimes things are going to roll your way, and you're going to play a pretty good team and put a bunch of points on them. And then you're going to get an opportunity that'll be demoralizing, and then Miller Moss gets to come in the fourth quarter kind of thing again. So I think there's high potential for blowouts where some of the if you just look at the sidelines, like everything was organized. Like people were doing their job. Everything was going the right way. But not everything's going. Like you can do your job, and then there was this weird punt return that things can happen that are kind of beyond your control. That just like the things aren't going your way. But people are doing enough things right. Enough people, enough good athletes are doing things right that you're going to get into some more blowout situations. So I expect some of those.
Yeah, I think we will see USC blow out a few more teams this year. I think that's not a huge stretch. I don't think it's going to look quite like the Rice game.
No,
did.
yeah,
Like that was that was such an outlier. I mean, I think subtract 3 pick sixes, and what do you get? It's USC 45 to 14.
Yeah.
That's a little more plausible. A
Right.
score, a type of blowout.
But the defense also took away opportunities for the
That's true.
offense. Like they could have scored more. Just
That's fair. But
He
I
might have
mean,
needed more effort to put up that many points.
yeah, I mean, how
Yes.
much game time passed over the span of those 3 interceptions? It can't
Like
be more than
6 or 7 minutes, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean,
I
even
mean,
as
you get the
fast as
ball
the
back.
Trojan offense moves,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's still pretty good. Like those are one possession touchdowns, right? So, yeah, I think probably it's safe to say more blowouts to come. We'll see which ones those are and which ones those aren't. But yeah,
And what was the
I'm
last?
glad she got something memorable. I'm glad Megan got to see something like that for her time.
Yeah. And do you remember what the last one was, Jack?
Yeah,
or
so
what?
she asked, was that expected of Caleb Williams, and will we see that even more? I think it was definitely expected. I think people expected to see him a little bit more. Of course, with the 3 pick sixes, kept him off the field. But not only did PFF have him as the highest rated Trojan offensive player, he had like a 93 overall grade. He was also the highest graded passer when pressured, which didn't come all that often, but he was very good while under pressure. He also was the highest graded passer in all of college football, this is, on throws at the intermediate level. We mentioned he responded well to pretty much every third down, throws over the middle to Mario Williams and Kyron Hudson. So I think this should definitely be expected of Caleb Williams, and you may even see him with more volume once the offense gets the ball more, because he also only threw 2 touchdowns, which is kind of crazy considering they put up 66 points. But I would say the volume will definitely come, but I would expect this level of efficiency and running and throwing ability from Caleb for the majority of the season.
Yeah. And let's make a rule. So if you're calling within 6,000 miles of Redondo Beach, then to keep it to 1 question. But if you're calling from outside
you
that
get a
range, you
bonus.
can get some bonus questions.
Yeah, you can
okay.
tack it in.
So we got another caller. If you guys want to call into the show, 512-4-TUNNEL. Let's go to Dave. He wants to talk about the USC football game. Hi, Dave. You're on Tunnel Vision.
Hi, guys. Good to be back on Tunnel Vision. RJ, welcome to the show. I'm sure you've heard of me, but again, I'm Dave from Iowa, the longtime caller. So I got 2 questions. Sorry, Ryan, I know, but hey, 2 new people, why not?
I mean, Iowa's
Ryan,
not exactly
first off,
Redondo.
But it's still not 6,000 miles.
Yeah.
Ryan, my first question is, what's your take on Kyle Ford being, I believe, it was an oar for the second string? I kind of expected him to make a big step this year, being an upperclassman and being a former 5-star. And then RJ, what's your scouting report on Aaron Armitage? I did a little research on terms of the depth chart and the roster, and he's from Blair Academy. And back-to-back years, Blair Academy have had Odafe Owe and David Ojabo drafted in the first and second round. So could another Blair alum go within the first 2 rounds in 3 years in a row?
Thanks for the question, Dave. Do you want to do that first, and I'll do the.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that's quite a bar for Aaron Armitage, who, by the way, was heavily recruited by USC.
Yes.
And was, I don't want to go too far into off the record things, but was a very, very likely USC Trojan for a stretch of his recruitment. But anyway, comes from a super athletic family. His sister is a star basketball player, young, like high schooler basketball player. So the athleticism is there. The pedigree is kind of there. And they like him. They're happy with him. They're happy kind of with where he is right now. As far as like top level
Where's he playing?
draft, he's an edge rusher.
Okay.
Yeah, so 6'5", listed 6'5", 260. So again, 1 inch shorter than Eric Gentry, but 60 pounds heavier. So again, but yeah, I think right now the safest thing is potential all Pac-12 player. We'll see what these next 2 to 3 years do for him. I think when you look at USC and you get a Corey Foreman in, and everyone expects him to be an out of the box NFL blow minds type of a player in a situation. Even I would say the vast majority of guys who get drafted at those positions don't blow up the second that they show up. They need 2 to 3 years to become those kind of guys, So jury out a little bit, but they are happy with him, and he certainly has the tools and the work ethic. I will say, just one quick little thing, he, like a lot of kids in his class, had to work through COVID.
Yeah.
And he did a ton of work on his own to his body, dropped his body fat down. Everyone talks about the COVID-15 for us mortals and all that kind of stuff. But still, even for an athlete, the fact that he took his conditioning and his strength training and all that seriously when it was just him. He didn't have a team to work out with. He didn't have coaches to train him or do anything. He kind of had a room in his house, and he went after it. So that work ethic piece that I don't think we talk enough when it comes to draft talk is there too. So that's the Aaron Armitage thing, and now you can...
Yeah, for Kyle Ford. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock, this is my theory, not anything I know, into what USC's wide receiver rotation was. We thought we'd see more Brendan Rice. He was on special teams more and caught one pass at the end in the fourth quarter. We didn't, Terrell Bynum was in sometimes, but just really wasn't used. He was in on the play, the Rayleigh Brown touchdown, I believe he was in on that one. I feel like if you're going to look at 4 games and then kind of see where snap counts are, because Shotgun's doing all that charting and everything. We'll put that all up on uscfootball.com. And I think we'll get a better feel. But I feel like you're going to have a game where, like, we might be talking on Sunday, like Terrell Bynum had a big game, or even like a Kyle Ford or something. So I don't necessarily mean, the way it played out against Rice is going to be the way it plays out every time. Is Travis Dye going to have more of I feel like we have to feel this out a little bit, and we might still see a bunch of Kyle Ford. We might still see Terrell Bynum and some of those other guys. But, maybe more Gary Bryant. Like there's guys we thought we'd see more of, and maybe we didn't. But I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in just what happened with Rice because, like I said, Caleb Williams had 44 snaps, I believe, with starting offense there. If they get 56, 65, whatever it is against Stanford, and it's a closer game, I think that'll give you a better feel for where these guys are playing. And we might see more Kyle Ford or some of those other guys, but, that's just my thoughts.
And a quick thing on Kyle Ford. It's kind of interesting because in talking to him in the offseason and at SC Media Day and all that kind of stuff, the weird thing is I got the sense that he felt more comfortable, more welcomed, and I felt he had a better shot to get on the field with a brand new staff than I think he maybe felt at times last season with the incumbent staff.
Yeah.
I think he had the injury, so that set him back. But he showed enough last year to suggest that he was progressing, and he looked pretty clearly like a rotation receiver, like a guy you should be running in and out of there and a guy you should be throwing deep down the field to. So, yeah, I would keep an eye on him. It wouldn't surprise me to see him progress. Again, as we've said so much, like, it's a season. Like, there's a lot of things that are going to happen to the good and to the bad that are going to open doors and close doors, and you don't know how that's going to play out. But I don't think anybody in the building has written Kyle Ford off. I don't think Kyle Ford has. I think that's the most important thing.
There's potential for a handful of guys that did almost nothing against Rice having huge games down the road.
Absolutely.
I think we also haven't even really mentioned the tight end position, which we'll get to later because there's a bunch of great questions. But the tight ends are going to have to get used at some point too. That was only one target to a USC tight end, so I think you're right. They're just spreading the wealth around as much as they can right now. Also, with limited offensive snaps, they didn't get the best ability to do that and get volume to a lot of guys. So I think you're right that Kyle Ford, pretty much everyone on that wide receiver depth chart is going to get a chance. We saw good plays from pretty much everyone. Everyone got at least one catch. We saw C.J. Williams and Kyron Hudson. So Kyle Ford, I think you're right, RJ. They haven't written him off, but we can get to some questions. I think that's all we've got for live callers. The first one comes from SoCal Dad on YouTube. Over under 1 pick 6 for USC against Stanford.
Ooh, that's a great. We're into the prop bets.
I guess we'll have to say over under like half, so 0 or 1.
I love
if you put it at half, I'm going to take under anyway. Like I don't think it's like those are hard to get. USC had 1 in the last 3 years, and then 3 in the one game. So
Yeah.
I would go the under.
I mean, I also don't even think it's that big of a knock if you take the pick 6 thing away. I think you probably expect USC to get their hands on a Tanner McKee pass just because of the volume.
Yeah.
You know, he's going to throw.
But returning it for a touchdown.
He's going to throw 35 passes. He's going to throw 40 passes on Saturday. Every pass every quarterback throws is just one pass closer to their next pick. It's going to happen, right? But yeah, the pick 6 thing though, that's tough, especially when you look at what Stanford throws, right? Like if you're throwing deep ball fades that are essentially just a jump ball, and you're talking
even if you
about
pick it off, it's it's hard to return it.
Yeah,
for a
you're in a
touchdown.
standing position and you're 75 yards from the field. It's tough to do that, but you never know. I mean, we'll see. I do want to put in. Well, I'll put it out to you guys. But you guys heard how Kalen Bullock's nickname on the team is Sticks.
Yeah.
So, can we anoint anyone that he gets as a pick Sticks?
I like it.
I don't know.
They were calling him Double Sticks this year because he's bigger. You know?
They were, but I just Sticks Bullock is such a great name.
It is
like
a really
it's
good
just
name.
categorically a great name. Like
Pick
I don't
Sticks.
know, but
Pick Sticks,
yeah,
sure.
Pick Sticks. So yeah, Trojan fans, get that hashtag rolling out there.
Nice.
Maybe we have to give that to Eric Gentry too. So like it's for either of them. Maybe he's the one that stole the
he could be
nickname
a
from Kalen. So he went to Sticks, and then Kalen
He must
went
have
to Double Sticks.
I'm curious what his nickname is if he has one. So I'm sure
Yeah.
We're going to have to figure out. Maybe that's a question we ask him the next time he's available to the media. But another question coming from Facebook, this time from Dan. He said he was really impressed last week and asked us what is one thing that impressed us all last week. And I'll start. I'll say that the offensive line and pass protection was really impressive to me. There's a lot of things that we could talk about individual player-wise, but I thought the offense did a great job pass protecting. And I was also just impressed that there were not very many penalty mistakes outside of the Romello Height targeting call that I think for USC fans was a good sign. There weren't a ton of mistakes until the backup offensive line came in and had a couple.
Yeah, real quick, and I'll try to go through these quickly because we're already at the top of the hour. But I would say how clean it was. Like everything was organized. Players were running onto the field, knew what they were doing. They weren't like looking back. What's the play? Oh, call timeout. We're on a PAT. Like it just was clean. It was well run. It looked like you coached the players to do something. They had a game plan. Everybody executed the game plan, and that's what it's supposed to look like. And so I think just how clean it looked was good for me.
Yeah, and maybe piggybacking off that just a little bit, but just how many different guys got their hands on the ball and made significant plays.
Yeah.
Kyron Hudson converted at least one third down on a big catch, right?
Yeah, it was a 3rd and 8, and that's the one Travis Dye just blew up the defensive end or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, C.J. Williams jumps in the game.
He's a big looking
makes
kid
his
too,
first catch. Another guy, he's the same weight as Eric Gentry, and he's not 6'6". So yeah, I would just say the breadth of everything, and I think Jack's point's also well taken too. They didn't even really dig too deep into the tight end package.
Yeah. All right.
Well, that gets us pretty much right into our next question. It's, do you anticipate that USC will involve the tight end more in this game? I asked Lincoln Riley about that in the press conference earlier today. He said they didn't get as many targets to the tight ends as they wanted to, of course, with not a ton of snaps, and the wide receivers were all doing their thing. But he said that he really appreciated what the tight ends did. I think he was inspired by their performance, impressed by guys like Malcolm Epps and then Lake McCree, who had that one red zone target. He was the only one for the tight ends. I think that you're going to see more involvement because it's kind of hard to get any less in the passing game than one target.
Yeah.
But I think it was
Yeah.
good to hear from Lincoln Riley that he's still impressed by that room and that maybe there were other factors that limited the targets going to the tight ends.
Yeah, and my feeling, they came out in 10 personnel, right? So you have one running back, no tight ends, so four wide receivers. We saw a bunch of two backs, Austin Jones came in as a lead blocker, but then he got a couple touchdown runs out of those two. I think both of them were. I don't remember exactly, but yeah. So I feel like this was a game where they did a lot of 10 personnel, and then the next game it might be something different, and so you might see more tight ends. You might see two tight ends on the field more. I think it's just going to depend on the game plan per week. This was just a week that they were it was like a 4-wide week, So I think it'll change just week to week.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I also think a lot of it, too, they're going to take a look at the opponent personnel. I think when you look at Stanford's linebackers, Jacob Mangum-Farrar, pretty athletic dude, but the other two guys who start for them, Levani Damouni and Ricky Miezon, kind of Shane Lee, stocky, downhill, big hitters, guys that maybe you want to see, can they run up the seam?
Oh, gotcha.
That
Yeah.
you maybe want to
Put
see.
those guys in coverage
yeah,
or whatever.
maybe this is time to see what they can do with Lake McCree or Malcolm Epps. But yeah, like Jack said it perfect. There's only one way to go. So yes, we will see more tight end usage.
So we said what was the most impressive thing in general, but now this is another one. Which player was the best or the most impressive to you and really jumped off the screen? I'll let you guys start on this one. I don't want to steal the
Caleb
first
Williams.
answer. Caleb
Williams, like he was flawless.
Yeah, I mean, I think the stat line, I actually think the thing that struck me the most was not even the passing. There were at least 3 or 4 plays where, at least for those plays, Rice had everyone covered. And on a play like that, you're saying to yourself, okay, throw it away, you lose 0 yards, or pick up 2 or 3 yards, pick up 5 yards. He was picking up 12 and 13 yards on a just broken play. You know, a play where USC didn't have anyone open. It wasn't spectacular. It didn't require a bunch of crazy spin moves. Just the ease with which he was eating up yards with his legs. You know, it's one thing if a quarterback, oh, you're frustrated we didn't get to him, and he +5'd us. But it's another thing where we covered everybody, he ran, and we've moved the chains.
Yeah.
That's a different scenario. And that stuck out to me watching him live, I think, above anything else that I saw from him.
And that dime he threw, it was 3rd and long again, and to Travis Dye, which it was for the far sideline from the broadcast. It was like, there's no way he's in bounds. Like, holy cow, he caught that. It was just like, you move the chains. Like, he could do, like, if he needed to throw into a window, he did it. There was a lot of times there just guys were wide open, but.
Yeah. I think he was also very poised. So if you're going off the jumped off the screen part of the question, I think you get one answer on each side of the ball. Raleek Brown just looked like a different player out there on the football field. And then Shane Lee was just popping heads, and he leads into the next question. So would you rather be a quarterback passing against Eric Gentry or a running back against Shane Lee?
Oh, would I rather?
I think I'd probably do the running back thing. Like, you get tackled by linebackers all the time, but like, you don't see a lot of 6'6" linebackers like try to throw against those guys. So
yeah, I think that's I don't know. It just comes down to like, what do you want? Like, I don't want to get popped by Shane Lee. I think it's probably gonna put a damper on my day way more than Eric Gentry just intercepting a ball that was intended for me. So from that point of view, I think the bias is clear, but it's not a fun option. Whoever that question is, I want option C.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. If you pass and Gentry picks you off, and then Shane Lee is the lead blocker, and he's going to put you on your butt, or you have to stay in between Gentry or touchdown, then maybe you have to make a business decision.
Oh, you found an even worse outcome. Okay.
There you go. There's your option C.
Yeah, there's option C.
The starting right quarterback, like, really, does he break his arm or something? Like with trying to tackle Kalen Bullock on the interception return, that first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. He got injured pretty. He was out for the game after that one. Sticks
put his shoulder down.
It did look weird. In the broadcast, it just looked like it was sort of like a low attempt at a tackle. He might have just got hit with the knee or something. I don't know. I don't know what happened.
It's kind of like NASCAR crashes, what they always say. The ones that look horrific, the dude ends up just
he's like
gets out of the car and
like,
walks out. And the ones you don't think are a big deal are kind of serious. Football can be like that.
Like, wasn't Daryl Earnhardt died, like, and it didn't look that bad.
Nobody thought, but let's immediately cut the NASCAR talk off.
Sorry, I don't know much about NASCAR, but I do remember that.
Well, you've heard all that I know, so unless you want Days of Thunder references, I got those for
Ricky Bobby. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Unfortunately, I don't have like the NASCAR references to keep up with your Simpsons references that I obviously don't know. But I think that's all we've got for questions. Do either of you have any last thoughts about this Stanford game before we maybe pack it up as we?
We do have to do our picks.
All right.
We're doing our picks. I think RJ, did you take USC?
I did.
Okay, so the veterans here. I think mostly the veterans took USC given 32. And if you know me, like, I do not. I would take whoever USC was playing before. I'm just like, they're not going to cover the spread. Took the 32 in this one, obviously an easy cover. Some of our younger, members of the staff, like Jack here, or, that's too many points. Give me 32 points.
And we're looking good at halftime. I'll tell you that much. And then 2 straight pick sixes and a pick. And I was like, well, there goes the cover.
It wasn't looking good at halftime. It was looking good after one quarter. It was tied at 7. That was good.
Here's all I'll say about that situation. It's not so much that the youngsters misread the game. It's like, I feel like they didn't even watch us on tunnel vision when you, me, and Shotgun pretty adamantly said no. There's no path. Like, and again, in a normal world, in 99 out of 100 scenarios, 32 gives you pause. It almost doesn't matter, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, Rice only like I said when I made the pick, Rice only lost by that amount 2 times last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just don't think that they threw that many picks and that many pick sixes in any game. So
that
I think
didn't help.
It was the pick sixes that did it in, but I think SC, they looked determined to beat him by more than 32 anyway.
Yeah,
but
this line's weird because it was around 11. USC favored by 11 on the road, and now it's down to like 8 or 8.5, depending where you were. We're going to do our picks for the 8-point spread, but yeah, I just feel like USC is going to win this one comfortably. That maybe it's sort of close in the beginning. I think Stanford's going to score some points, but like to see USC score less than 40 is going to be a surprise. And that's Stanford limiting possessions and stuff too. I just feel like they're going to, it's going to be like a 42-24 kind of game, something like that. But I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's going to be a little tighter, a little longer. But I think they're. I mean, are we giving away our?
I guess we can kind of
the article. Like, what are we doing here? Are we just assuming? I mean, Megan has tuned in. I think the least we do is owe her a little info. But yeah, I pick USC to cover. I don't necessarily know that I picked them to easily cover or put what they did on Rice or anything like that. But 8, I can see it being a 3-point game with 6 minutes to go, and USC scoring a touchdown that does the job.
Right.
In terms of the cover.
Yeah.
Right? That seems plausible to me.
I just think there's a probability that this was a Stanford team that was really bad last year, and there's some of that's going to carry over. I think they're going to be better than I think I predicted them to go like 1-11 or something. Well, I was like, they're going to be bad. They're not going to do that.
But if you look at their schedule,
and they can beat some good teams.
To be honest with you, their schedule is crazy.
The schedule's brutal.
So they have, just for people who don't know, they have a massive pendulum every other year where the bulk of the tough games are at home. And then in the other years, which is the year we're in, the even years, they're all on the road. Yeah. So Pac-12 North-wise, they are at Washington. They are at Oregon. They are also at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
They are also, this year, at Utah.
Yeah.
So, like, it's rough.
Yeah.
Right? And then that's before you even talk about Washington State, who's beaten them 5 years in a row.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think 1-11, a little harsh. But
no, it's harsh.
But they have a tough schedule, one of the toughest in the country. So
if they go to a bowl this year, that's a huge accomplishment, I would think. It's a big improvement over last year, but
yeah, I think that's fair to say.
I don't know. We'll see. It is my opinion. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I'm taking USC to cover as well. I mean, 8 points, that seems very, very low. I think 11, I still would have taken SC over the 11 points. I think it'll be a quick first half. I think a lot of time's going to go off the clock. Stanford's going to run the clock down, running the ball. Their scripted plays might be successful, which is the only success Rice had on offense were the 15-plus plays that they scripted, having known Alex Grinch a little bit before. I think after that, it's going to take a lot for them to score against SC. They might need to put together some long drives, and then SC's going to get the ball back and score sometimes in 4 plays, 5 plays that in the fourth quarter. I just don't think they'll be able to outlast. I think you're right. It'll be maybe a 2-touchdown or 2-touchdown and a field goal type win for SC. 8 seems really, really low.
Yeah, I agree with that. Real quick, Gary on the chat had want to know about Dijon Benton if he was injured. And so we reported on Tuesday he came out of the tunnel with a cast on, so he did get hurt in the game. We're not exactly sure when. The defensive lineman for USC. So don't think he's going to be out. I don't think he's going to be back for this one for sure. But Lincoln Riley was asked about it. He's been kind of coy. So we're not allowed to report on injuries going forward. So if we saw him come out and practice on Wednesday and he was fine, the cast was gone, we wouldn't be able to say that. Not anticipating that to be the case, but that's a blow to the USC's defensive line. I mean, he got a lot of snaps in that game, so depth is a concern there. We'll see. You might see a little more Solomon Tuilapupu, who did well in this one, but yeah, I would not expect to see Dijon Benton, but we're not going to get any official. At least we can't any official injury observations. If Lincoln Riley offers something up and says, hey, he had season-ending surgery, then we could report that. But it's only going to be information that they give us. We're not allowed to, if we saw something, if we saw him amputated his leg, we weren't allowed to report something like that.
Well, but just in a real quick thing, though, Lincoln, for those who didn't catch it, Lincoln Riley did say he wasn't ruling anybody out as of today. And so within that umbrella is Rayleigh Brown, who I know people are really curious about.
Yes.
So we can't give anything beyond that. But he hasn't been ruled out, and we are, less than 48 hours from kickoff. So there's a chance that we see him. Way more optimistic that we're going to see him than Dejan, unfortunately.
And Vontae, I wanted to know, does Osiris St. Brown still play for Stanford? Like, no, he's been gone for how many years?
Yeah, he's two,
like 2 or 3.
3, yeah.
Yeah, he might have been I think he was pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
I think he put that in the chat a couple times, but yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up our show. Fun pregame. I like this new format where we can switch up our lineups, move things around. Sunday, because Jack won't be back in time, I will be in Jack's seat, and we'll have Chris and Shotgun here. We might do a little. We're going to be driving back from Stanford together, so we might do a little car cast.
Wow.
Still a little Rainer Troy thing, like literally in the car driving back, doing this kind of thing. But we'll be back Sunday night, 7 p.m. Same time, recapping what happened on the farm between USC and Stanford. So make sure you tune in for that one. And so that's Jack, that's RJ, and I'm Ryan. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Tunnel Vision. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.